Hello, and welcome to our presentation on the cycle and social dynamic of language development. I am Heriberto, and joining us later will be Abigaile. Language development. What is language development? ¿Qué es el desarrollo del lenguaje? Language development is a process starting early in human life. When a person begins to acquire language by learning it as it's spoken and by mimicry. Children's language development moves from simple to complex. Infants start without language. Yet by 4 months of age, babies can read lips and discriminate speech sounds. Aspectos de language. Aspectos del lenguaje. Fonético. Fonológico. El estudio del sonido de un lenguaje. Phonology. The study of the sounds of a language. Sintáctico. La gramática de un lenguaje. Syntax. The grammar of a language. Semántico. El estudio del significado de las palabras. Semantics. The study of the meaning of the words. Pragmático. Las reglas que guían cómo usamos el lenguaje en situaciones sociales. Pragmatics. The rules that guide how we use language in social situations. Lenguaje y el cerebro. Hay dos mitades o hemisferios que comprenden el cerebro humano. El lado izquierdo contiene dos áreas que es la central para el lenguaje. Una de esas partes es llamada brocas. Es la parte del cerebro que está relacionada con la producción del habla. La otra parte se llama Wernicke. Es la parte del cerebro que tiene que ver con el entendimiento y significado en el habla. There are two halves of or hemispheres that comprise the human brain. The left hemisphere contains two areas that are central to language. One of them is called Broca's area, that part of the brain that is involved in the physical production of speech. The other one is called Wernicke's area, the part of the brain that has to do with understanding the meaning in speech. In this picture of the brain, we are going to see the functional areas of the cerebral cortex. Number 4, the Broca areas, which is in charge of muscle speech. Number 8, which is the Wernicke area, is in charge of writing and spoken language comprehension. Función del cerebro en la comunicación. La comunicación consiste en dos facetas: aspecto sensitivo, recepción del mensaje, en el que intervienen los ojos y los oídos. Aspecto motor, emisión del lenguaje. Aproximadamente el 30% de la corteza cerebral está destinada para las funciones del habla y del lenguaje. Function of the brain in the communication. Communication consists of two stages. Sensitive aspect, reception of the message, in which the eyes and the ears intervene. Motor aspect, emission of the language. Approximately 30% of the cerebral cortex is designated for speech and language functions. Stage prelinguistic from 0 to 12 months. Babbling, dilation, syllables with great difficulty, respond to his name, ecolalia.
Oh, you're gonna eat his eye?
Hannah is learning to connect the pictures with words, a great help as she struggles to develop speech skills. Pediatricians say reading to your kids is a great idea, but so is just talking to them.
Talking to your baby is so important because babies get their greatest comfort from the human voice.
Simply talking about whatever you're doing is a good way to keep up the parent-child dialogue.
Fold the shirt.
Hannah is off to a good start. The babbling she does now will turn into words later. Meanwhile, Hannah's just trying to hold up her end of the conversation.
The smiling and the gurgling and the babbling is the very first conversation that they're having.
Right around age 2, you should be able to understand about 50% of what your child says. She should also be putting together 2-word sentences at this point. A couple of more milestones. At age 3, you should be able to understand about 75% of what your child says, and she'll use 3-word sentences. And by age 4, nearly 100% with more complex sentences being used.
Developmental milestones: 3 months, point and curling; 6 months, bubbling; 12 months, first words; 18 months, knows 5 to 40 words; 2 years, 150 to 300 words, 2 or 3 word sentences; 3 years, 900 to 1,000 words as short questions; 4 years, 2,000 words, 5 word sentence; 5 years, identifies letters, creates longer sentences. Developmental milestone to watch for. Because stuttering is most likely to be successfully intervened when treated early, young children should be accessed if they have stuttered for 3 to 6 months or more, and if the deficiency is pronounced around the 18 to 24 months milestone. What is stuttering? Stuttering is a communication disorder in which the flow of the speech is broken by repetitions like this, prolongations like this, or a normal stoppage, no sounds, or sounds or syllables. There may also be unusual facial or body movements associated with the form to speak.
Listen, my children, and you shall hear the midnight ride of Paul Revere.
Anyone can start at any age, but most commonly children who are learning to form words into sentences. Boys are more likely than girls to stutter. Normal language deficiency most often starts between the ages of 18 and 24 months.
Hello, this is Abigaile. I'll be taking you through the second half of our presentation. Here's a list of 6 of the most common speech-language disorders. We've started looking already at stuttering, and we'll look at that more in a moment, but first I want to explain briefly the meaning of the other disorders in the top 6. Number 1, apraxia of speech is a motor speech disorder affecting an individual's ability to translate conscious speech patterns into motor execution. Skipping to number 3, dysarthria is often characterized by slurred or slow speech that can be difficult to understand. Common causes include nervous system disorders and conditions that cause facial paralysis or tongue or throat muscle weakness. Number 4, lisping. Most people know this one, in which S and Z are most often mispronounced. For example, as in speech. Number 5, spasmodic dysphonia. The disorder in which the muscles that generate a person's voice go into periods of spasm. This results in breaks or interruptions in the voice. Researchers think it may be caused by a problem in the basal ganglia of the brain. And number 6, cluttering. It's a fluency disorder characterized by a rapid and or irregular speaking rate, excessive disfluencies, and often other symptoms such as language or phonetical errors and attention deficits. To identify cluttering, you must listen to non-stuttered speech of the speaker in order to differentiate it from stuttering. Looking into things that may affect children's ability to acquire and develop normal speech and language reveals the following factors. Socioeconomic status. Low socioeconomic status results in disproportionate levels of language development delays and debilities for children of impoverished families. Genetics plays a role in some language disorders, stuttering among them. Gender. Males are more likely to have a language disorder both in childhood and as adults. Social environment. Impoverished environs can affect a child's development profoundly, in extreme examples leaving the critical brain areas for language comprehension and emission underdeveloped. And finally, family reading habits. Reading to young children helps to advance their language acquisition. Returning to our focused look at stuttering, different types of stutters are sound or syllable repetition, he, whole word repetition, the, multiple word repetitions, prolongations, blocks when a word just won't come out, and insertions, like when you add an extra word like into your sentences. There are 4 total theorists mentioned briefly in this presentation, so you may choose the one you find most interesting for your class response. First, we have Dr. Charles G. Van Ripper, founder of the Department of Speech Pathology and Audiology and himself a stutterer. He was the developer of the Midvus fluency technique. In many cases, stuttering can be helped by therapy. In Midvus, clients are first motivated, meaning encouraged to talk openly about their feelings and needs. Identification means helping the person become more aware of their stuttering, as well as potential triggers for it. Many times, stuttering is a result of, or worsened by, anxiety or fear. So, Van Ripper also focused on helping clients confront their fears in desensitization. Other phases of Midfuss treatment are variation, approximation, and stabilization. In Midfuss negative practice, also known as stuttering modification, the main goal is not to stop stuttering, but to do it more easily and to modify speech to reduce the severity of the stuttering. Another thing that happens with stuttering on purpose is that the fear of stuttering is confronted, reducing anxiety and covert and avoidance behaviors. Introducing variation into the vocabulary of a person who stutters helps increase their speaking control in a variety of settings. This promotes a sense of mastery, which in turn lowers anxiety, which helps with gaining speaking control, creating a positive loop of overall speech and control improvement. To summarize the objectives of therapists and parents by the Midfuss technique, provide a relaxed environment that allows many opportunities for the child to speak. This includes setting aside time to talk to one another, especially when the child is excited and has a lot to say. Listen attentively when the child speaks and focus on the content of the message rather than responding to how it is said or interrupting the child. Speak in a slightly slowed and relaxed manner. This can help reduce time pressures the child may be experiencing. Listen attentively when the child speaks and wait for him or her to say the intended word. Don't try to complete the child's sentences. Also, help the child learn that a person can communicate successfully even when stuttering occurs. And talk openly and honestly to the child about stuttering if he or she brings up the subject. Let the child know that it is okay for some disruptions to occur. The second and third language theorists we'll touch on today are B.F. Skinner and Noam Chomsky. B.F. Skinner is considered the father of behaviorism and did revolutionary and groundbreaking research on animal and human behavior beginning in the 1930s. Noam Chomsky wrote a lengthy critique of Skinner's behaviorist theory of language acquisition in 1959, which Skinner unfortunately ignored until it had been disseminated widely and accepted broadly among the scientific community. While Skinner was right about a great many things, he was incorrect to assert that behaviorism could account for the entire language learning process. According to B.F. Skinner, language is shaped through operant conditioning and the use of reinforcements. Skinner was correct in thinking that children's speech development can be encouraged and shaped by behaviorism, but he was incorrect to assert that there would be no physical structure in the brain specific to language acquisition, and that behaviorism could account for the entire language learning process. He was also incorrect when he took a stand against Noam Chomsky's theory of nativism as well, which we will discuss next. But first, a 1-minute video clip explaining Skinner's behaviorism.
Today, we are going to talk about behaviorism. Behaviorism combines psychology and structural linguistics. These two combine to form the audiolingual method. One of the keys to ALM is SRR, which stands for stimulus, response, reinforcement. As an example, let's take a baby, the sentence "I love you," and candy. The baby learns to say "I love you" to get candy. So when the baby wants candy, she says, "I love you," and receives candy. Wanting candy is the stimulus. Saying "I love you" is the response. The candy is the reinforcement.
Noam Chomsky developed a theory that proposes that the human brain is innately wired to learn language, a theory known as nativism. Chomsky claimed that learning spoken language triggered the activation of what he called a universal grammar. Next, we'll view a short animation on Chomsky's theory of language acquisition.
Language sets us apart. Other animals communicate, but they don't have anything approaching the sophisticated grammar of human languages. How is it that we learn to speak and think in language so easily? Young children become adept in a new language very quickly. Since the dawn of philosophy, thinkers have argued about whether or not we have innate ideas, Whether we are born knowing things, as Plato believed, or rather, as John Locke and other empiricists argued, the mind is a blank slate on which experience writes. An American linguist, Noam Chomsky, gave a twist to this debate in the 1960s by demonstrating that children learning to speak just don't have enough information to form the complex grammatical maneuvers that allow them to generate unlimited new and original sentences. Yet they do so with ease. There's a poverty of stimulus. Something else must be going on. Chomsky's hypothesis was that there are inborn structures in our brain, what he called a language acquisition device, or LAD, which gives us a natural propensity to organize the spoken language that we hear in various grammatical ways. Without that, we couldn't get started as language learners. If he's right, language structure is hardwired as a kind of universal grammar. Our slates have been written on before we emerged from the womb.
Now for our final theorist, Stephen Krashen, who has made major contributions to the understanding of second language acquisition. According to Krashen, we acquire a new language when we are given comprehensible input in low anxiety situations and when we are presented with interesting and meaningful messages that we actually understand. And now, an excerpt from a lecture by Stephen Krashen.
Our theory begins with two important words, acquisition and learning. We think, as you may have heard, people have two different ways of getting better in language. You can acquire language, you can learn language, and they're really different. And this is the fundamental concept. Once this one is understood, everything else follows. Acquisition, we sometimes call the natural way, and the synonym for acquisition is picking up a language. I was in Korea for a couple of weeks and I picked up some Korean. That really means you acquired it. We think acquisition is subconscious, and this really means two things. It means, first of all, while you're acquiring, you don't know you're acquiring, you think you're doing something else. You think you're having a conversation, reading a book, of course you are. But at the same time, without realizing it, you might be acquiring. The other process is learning. Acquisition is subconscious, learning is conscious. Learning is what we did in school. Learning in everyday language, when we talk about rules, when we talk about grammar, we're talking about conscious learning. The theory is that error correction helps learning. You make a mistake, someone corrects you, you change your idea of what the rule is. That's how it works in theory. We'll see if the research shows that it's a very limited process. But the research has been telling me, again, every day, no matter where you look, you come back to this. The action is with acquisition. Acquisition gives you fluency and accuracy. Even for the most analytic thinking, grammar-loving adult, it's at least 95% acquisition. For the child, it's 100%.
As previously mentioned, children with stuttering disorder fare best when issues are treated early, so if a child you know seems to be struggling, recommend to their parents that they see a licensed speech and language pathologist sooner rather than later. One common assessment tool, and something you'll want to make note of, is the Pediatric Stuttering Assessment. Endorsed by the American Speech Language Hearing Association, it is a questionnaire completed in part by the parents and in part by the speech pathologist based on direct observation of a child. It assesses the existence and magnitude of the stuttering problem, the possible effects of the school and home environment, medical and family history with an eye toward possible genetic predisposition, and various components of emotional well-being. Thank you so much for viewing our presentation. We hope you enjoyed it. In summary, children are affected by many different language acquisition disorders with myriad causes. Some can be effectively treated, others are intractable, but the lives of all children can be enhanced by the exercise of patience and understanding.